Have you ever sat at the dinner table looking across at your grown kids and quietly wondered what they truly think of you now? I mean, beyond the hugs, the phone calls, the birthday cards. Maybe you've even asked yourself, is what I've left behind really enough? Is money all they'll care about when I'm gone? If you've ever had that question sneak up on you, you're not alone. A lot of us reach a point in life where we start to look back and take inventory of the life we've lived, the people we've loved, and yes, the legacy we'll leave behind. And somewhere along the way, we start to realize something that nobody told us when we were younger. Money isn't the most meaningful thing you pass on. That's right. Your kids, as much as they appreciate the help with college tuition, the Christmas checks, or maybe even that down payment you pitched in for, they're holding something even more valuable close to their hearts. And chances are, it's not sitting in your bank account. Now, don't get me wrong. Money has its place. It eases burdens, it creates opportunities, and it gives a sense of security, especially in a world where things feel more expensive and uncertain every year. But what I want to talk to you about today goes deeper. It's about what really lasts. Not just in your kids' wallets, but in their memories, in their character, and in the kind of people they grow into. Because as it turns out, the things your children truly cherish, the things they'll carry with them long after you're gone, have very little to do with dollars and cents. And today, I want to help you uncover exactly what those things are. Things they may never tell you directly. Things they might not even fully realize themselves, but that shape them more than anything money ever could. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Your stories. Not your resume. Not your bank statement. Not even your proudest career achievement. But the stories of who you are. The kind you've lived, the kind you've survived, and yes, even the kind that still make you laugh until your belly hurts. Think about it for a moment. How often have your kids, even now as adults, asked you about what it was like when you were young? Or maybe they lean in a little closer when you talk about how you met their mother, or what it was like during your time in the service, or that first apartment you could barely afford but still somehow managed to fill with joy. They may not always say it outright, but those stories are their way of anchoring themselves to something steady, something true. Your stories are the blueprint of your family. They're the roots. And when you share them, with all the ups and downs, the stumbles and the triumphs, you're giving your kids something they can't buy anywhere else. A deeper sense of identity. You're helping them understand where they come from, and by extension, who they are. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to be a great storyteller to do this. You just need to speak from the heart. Tell them about that summer you worked 3 jobs just to save up for your first car. Or how you used to make a single can of beans stretch into a whole meal back in your 20s. Or how scared, but determined, you were when you became a parent for the first time. Because when you tell them the truth, you're giving them permission to be human, to face life's messiness with grace. And you're showing them, without even meaning to, that resilience doesn't come from a trust fund. It comes from lived experience. Now you might be thinking, my kids don't really ask. Maybe they're not interested. But don't be fooled. Just because they don't ask doesn't mean they're not listening. You may not see it now, but one day, maybe years down the road, they'll find themselves in a tough spot, a crossroads, a moment of doubt, and suddenly, that story you shared over a quiet cup of coffee or during a long car ride will come back to them like a light in the dark. That's legacy. Now let's talk about something else they value, probably more than either of you realize. Your time. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But think about it. In a world that's always rushing, a world of deadlines, screens, traffic, and distractions, time has become the most precious thing of all. When you give someone your undivided attention, when you sit down with them with no agenda, no phone in your hand, no TV blaring in the background. You're saying, you matter. You're telling them in a language louder than words that their presence is worth your presence. And for your kids, especially those juggling their own busy lives, that kind of attention is rare. It's meaningful. Whether it's a spontaneous lunch, a call just to check in, or taking the grandkids to the park and really being there, body and soul. Those are the moments that stick. Not the check you wrote last Christmas, not the inheritance waiting in a file folder, but you, present, connected, alive with them in the moment. I once spoke to a gentleman in his early 70s, retired Navy, proud father of 3, a good man by all accounts. He said something that really stuck with me. He said, "I used to think providing was enough. I gave them everything they needed, clothes, college, a stable home. But what I missed was being there, really being there." His voice cracked when he said it, because he knew you don't get those years back. But it's never too late to start. You don't need to plan some grand family vacation or throw big parties. Start with something small, but consistent. Send a message that says, period. I'm here, not just as your parent, but as your biggest fan, your listener, your reminder that love doesn't expire with age. Even a simple period. Tell me about your week. Can open a window to connection. And you know what happens when you give them your time? They start to give you theirs. Conversations open up. Distance shrinks. Hearts soften. And the funny thing is, the more time you invest, really invest, the less anyone thinks about money. Because when you feel seen, heard, and valued, the need for material things fades into the background. What you're giving is something money can't replicate. Presence. And in a world full of things, presence has become a rare and sacred gift. Now, before we go any further, I want you to pause for a second. Just take a breath. Think about your own life, the people who made you feel loved, seen, valued. I bet it wasn't the person who gave you the most money. I bet it was someone who showed up, someone who listened, someone who shared their story and gave you a piece of themselves. That's who you are now. You're that person in someone's life. And whether your kids say it out loud or not, they notice. They remember. And one day, when they look back, that's what will matter most. And as we keep going, there's one more thing I want to gently bring into focus. Something your kids quietly carry with them, whether they admit it or not. It's the third gift that speaks louder than money, and it might be the one they treasure the most. Your wisdom. Now, I know that word, wisdom, can feel a bit heavy. It sounds almost grandiose, like something out of a dusty old book or a graduation speech. But in truth, wisdom shows up in the smallest, simplest ways. It's the advice you gave when no one else knew what to say. It's how you handle a tough moment with calm instead of chaos. It's your ability to know when to speak and when to just be there. Your kids, whether they're 30 or 50, may not always say it out loud, but they lean on you more than you think. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've lived through more than they have. You've seen enough life to know what truly matters and what can wait until tomorrow. Maybe you've been through a tough marriage and came out stronger. Maybe you've lost people you loved and somehow learned how to carry their memory with grace. Maybe you've weathered financial storms, health scares, or big life changes and still found your footing. That's not just survival, that's experience, that's wisdom. And when your kids find themselves facing their own trials, a rocky marriage, job stress, parenting struggles, or just that aching question of, am I doing this right? Your voice, your example, your perspective becomes their anchor. Here's the part that really matters. It's not about preaching. It's not about telling them how to live or giving unsolicited advice. It's about living in a way that shows them what's possible, speaking with humility, listening more than lecturing, and offering your insights like a hand extended, not a finger pointing. I've seen it again and again. When a parent shares a bit of truth wrapped in kindness, it lands. It stays. It might not spark a reaction right away, but weeks later, your son will remember something you said as he sits in traffic after a hard day. Your daughter will quote you in passing while talking to her own kids. And they'll feel your presence, not just as a parent, but as a guide. That's a kind of inheritance money can't touch. It's funny, the older we get, the more we realize how little we actually need, and yet how much we have to offer. You might look in the mirror and see a few more wrinkles, maybe a little more gray, but don't let that fool you. What's behind those eyes? That lifetime of laughter, loss, triumph, and learning is priceless. So don't be afraid to share it. Not with pride or ego, but with the quiet confidence that says, I've been there, and I'm still here. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to your kids is, I love you. You're doing better than you think. Sometimes it's just letting them cry without fixing anything. Sometimes it's telling them about a time when you made a mess of things and found your way back. That's what they carry with them. Not your bank balance, not your will, not your furniture, but your voice, your calm, your belief in them. And here's something else that might surprise you. When you lead with presence, with time, with wisdom, something shifts. Your kids stop thinking about what they'll inherit in dollars and cents. They start thinking about what they've already inherited, in courage, in character, in clarity. And you start to feel something deeper than financial security. You feel relevance. You feel purpose. And let me tell you, there is nothing more energizing in this chapter of life than realizing you still have purpose. You're not just past your prime. You're not slowing down. You're carrying light that your family needs, especially in a world that can feel uncertain, even chaotic. Your steady voice, your perspective, your way of handling life with patience and humor, all of that is gold. Not the kind stored in safes or spreadsheets, the kind that lives in your family's DNA forever. Now, if there's a little voice in your head saying, well, it's too late for me to make a difference, I want you to do one thing. Kindly tell that voice to hush. It's never too late. Relationships are living, breathing things. They grow with love. They heal with consistency. And they bloom again with just a little warmth. All it takes is one meaningful conversation, one shared memory, one walk in the park where you listen more than you speak, one honest, I'm proud of you, even if it's overdue. And guess what? You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up, fully, authentically, even quietly. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being the richest parent or the funniest or the most successful. It's about being real, being you, and letting your kids see that, even now, you're still growing, still learning, still showing up with love in your hands. So, if you've been wondering what really matters to your kids, if you've ever felt unsure of your place in their lives now that they're older, let me remind you, you are still one of the most important people in their world. Not because of what you've given them, but because of who you are. And who you are is enough. Always has been. Always will be. You know, there's something deeply freeing that happens when we shift our focus from what we leave behind to what we're still here to give. And the best part? You don't need perfect health, a fat retirement account, or a picture-perfect family to give the things that matter most. That cup of coffee you share with your daughter on a slow Sunday morning, that counts. That quiet ride to the grocery store with your son, just listening to what's on his mind without interrupting, that counts too. Even the simple act of showing your grandkids how to tie a fishing knot or bake your famous banana bread, that is you passing down more than a recipe. That is love in action. Your presence, your stories, your wisdom. These are not small things. They are everything. And yet I know that sometimes it doesn't feel like that, especially when the world around us is shouting about stocks and inheritances, about planning for the end, about making sure the money lasts. Yes, of course, be responsible. Take care of what needs taking care of, but never ever let money become the only language of your love. Because here's the truth. Your kids might not remember the exact amount you left behind, but they will remember how you made them feel. Did they feel safe with you? Did they feel loved even when they messed up? Did they feel like they could come to you, even with their biggest fears and mistakes, and still be met with open arms? That's the legacy that matters. I once knew a man, a quiet, unassuming man, never made more than an average living. He didn't have much to give his kids in terms of inheritance, but at his funeral, his daughter stood up and said, "I've never needed a trust fund because my dad gave me something better, the belief that I was enough." Can you imagine that? All those years he probably worried about not having enough, and yet what he gave was priceless. That could be you. In fact, if you're watching this, it probably already is you, whether you realize it or not. You see, your kids aren't looking for you to fund their future. They're looking for you to help shape it. They need your guidance, yes, but also your grace. They need your approval, but more than that, your presence. They need to know that even when life gets hard, and it does, they have someone in their corner who's been through storms and still knows how to laugh. It's okay if you didn't get it all right the first time. Parenting doesn't come with a manual, and it certainly doesn't stop when the kids grow up. If anything, it just changes form. It becomes more about presence than discipline, more about listening than lecturing. And as you grow older, your power in their lives becomes less about control and more about example. When they see you living with purpose, with kindness, with curiosity, even now, they take notice. When they watch you forgive yourself for the past and still show up with joy, they learn how to do the same. That's leadership. That's love. That's something they will pass on, even if they never say a word about it. And let me gently say this too. If you're feeling disconnected from your children right now, if there's distance or silence or something unresolved between you, please don't give up. It's not too late to reach across that gap. Not with grand gestures, but with small steps. A letter. A message. A simple, "I'm thinking about you." You'd be amazed what can happen when you offer your heart without condition. Even if they don't respond right away. Even if it takes time. You're planting seeds. And love, when it's real, has a way of breaking through the toughest soil. Because at the core of every human being, no matter how old we are, no matter what stage of life we're in, is a simple truth. We all want to feel seen. We all want to know that we matter. And your kids, no matter how grown they are, still want that from you. So keep showing up. Keep being real. Keep telling your stories, giving your time, and offering your wisdom in small, beautiful ways. That's what they'll hold on to when life gets heavy. That's what they'll carry in their own parenting, in their own moments of doubt, in the quiet spaces where your love still echoes long after you've spoken it. You are more than your savings account. You are more than your estate plan. You are irreplaceable. And no matter how much or how little you give in material terms, the love, presence, and wisdom you share are worth more than anything that can be written into a will. So here's what I want to leave you with, my friend. You still have so much to give. You are still writing your story. And the most powerful parts of your legacy aren't stored in vaults or bank statements. They live in the hearts of the people you love. That's where your legacy lives. That's where you live, now and always. If this spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share a story, a thought, or even just a word that reminds you of what truly matters. And if you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life, because we're building a community here that values purpose, connection, and joy at every age. Here's to living fully, loving deeply, and leaving behind something no one can ever put a price on. Here's to you,